Please be seated. Distinguished guests, my name is Tom Bloxham, and it's my privilege to be Chancellor of this university. And wasn't to welcome you here today, and wasn't that a wonderful lecture from Jeanette beforehand? And if I may give you a bit of advice, if you're ever asked to talk in an audience like this, don't make the same mistake I did and ask Jeanette to be your warm-up act. Nancy very kindly welcomed all those of rank and stature by name, so it leaves to me to welcome those without rank and stature, says us dressed in our rather elaborate robes in the colours you'll notice of purple and yellow of UKIP. But you're all very welcome today to this honorary degree ceremony, which is taking place as part of the university's foundation commemorations. Rather sadly for myself, it's my final opportunity to do a foundation lecture, and I retire at the end of this year, having done my 7th year of Chancellor. I took over from Anna Ford and Terry Leahy, who were the previous Chancellors of the Victoria University of Manchester and UMass respectively, and this is the 10th anniversary. And it's been my privilege to be Chancellor, and a huge privilege. And one of the great privileges is to confer on these sorts of occasions and give honorary degrees. And we've had some wonderful, wonderful people in the last few years, people like Peter Higgs of Higgs Boson, Sir Bobby Charlton, Francis O'Grady from the TUC, John Timpson who ran Timpson's and fostered 100 kids, Mick Hucknall of Simply Red, Sir Alex Ferguson, or the boss as some of us like to call him, Tim Berners-Lee, Sir Bernard Lovell, and the 3 wonderful individuals we're going to honour today. The university continues to flourish, and it's fantastic to be here at the beginning of term and to see Oxford Road, the university campus, inundated with students. And it reminds me of 31 years ago when I also was an undergraduate and came to the University of Manchester for the first time. And I did have the great privilege of a free education and to be taught a liberal education in this great university. And I studied politics and modern history here. But in a way, it was a sort of the reverse tale that Jeanette was saying before, that actually I came to study politics, thinking that politics could change the world. And I sort of got slightly disillusioned. Well, one, understanding that politics was too important to be left to politicians, but also whoever you vote for, the government always seems to get in, and maybe there are other ways of changing the world. But what I've seen in the last 31 years is a huge change in my life, a huge change in the life of this great city of Manchester, and a huge change in the university. And perhaps really to update that story of Dickens and the Industrial Revolution, even in those last 31 years that I've been in Manchester, I've seen some fantastic changes. The 31 years ago when I came to Manchester, it may not have been Coketown, but a lot of those dark satanic mills were still very, very visible. The city was very dark, was very bleak. And when you came here after 6:30 at night, only 200 people lived in the city centre. There were no shops, few cultural institutions, little life. And people were still exodusing from the city centre into the suburbs. And over that 31 years, we've seen a huge progress in our great city, in our radical city, of people moving back into the city centre, of regeneration happening. We've been privileged to play a small part of that, of new cultural institutions, of galleries, of theatres, of concert halls opening, of the knowledge economy taking over, of the industry of Manchester changing. Perhaps in the 19th century, it was made from making things from industry. In the 20th century, from trade, from buying and selling things. But in the 21st century, from ideas. And the university has been the very heart of that change over those last 31 years. And I've seen it grow from what was always a good university into becoming a great university. And a lot of the emphasis came to that merger 10 years ago. But it's always had a vision of quality, a vision of social responsibility, and a vision of partnerships. And has allowed us to grow into what it now is the largest single-site university in the UK, the biggest student community. In total, 25 Nobel Prize winners have worked or studied here. Almost two-thirds of our research was ranked by the last RAE as world-leading or internationally excellent, and 9 out of 10 of our recent graduates go straight into employment. We're ranked 38th in the world, 7th in Europe, and 5th in the UK in the 2014 Shanghai Jiao Tong World Ranking. And in this last year, we continue to grow, I believe. And those of you who were present at the Foundation lecture will have heard the President and Vice-Chancellor speak about the fact the university is celebrating our 10th year. And you've seen yourselves, both in the film and heard about the progress made across a large number of areas since its inception in 2004. And the great film that we saw is now available on the web if you want to watch it. But all of those words of confidence, of radicalism, about making an impact, about a sense of purpose, about being progressive, about being vibrant, they're the skills that I learned when I was here 31 years ago, and the skills that students are still learning. And it does allow this city to become the original modern city. And I wholeheartedly agree with the President's assessment that over the course of those 10 years, there have been a large number of significant successes which we can celebrate. And many of those have occurred in the last year alone. It's always dangerous to select a small number, but I'm afraid that's exactly what I've been told to do. So, in November of last year, we learned that we were to be awarded a prestigious Queen's Anniversary Prize for our world-leading imaging techniques and extensive knowledge base to support the UK's strategic development in advanced materials and manufacturing. I was delighted and privileged to be in the party of staff and students that went to Buckingham Palace for the ceremony. The same month, the university was awarded a Times Higher Education Award for its outstanding contribution to the local community. The project being recognised was The Works, which helps job seekers in neighbouring areas to improve their skills and employment prospects. This is one of the signature social responsibility programmes. Certainly a number of years ago, there were very physical fences around the university, and many of the people living very close to the university felt that the university had nothing for them. And we've seen in the last few years those fences both physically come down and also a much more welcoming attitude to our neighbours around us. Also in the academic year, we learned that our scientists would benefit from a share of the Cancer Research UK investment of over £100 million across cutting-edge research centres to help get new treatments and diagnostics to patients sooner. The investment marked the latest phase in the development of the Cancer Research UK Centre's network of excellence, a unique chain of research hubs across the country. 4 months later, a number of MOOCs, or massive open online courses, were launched. MOOCs allowed universities to reach audiences that might not otherwise have accessed their teaching materials. Manchester is one of the first UK universities to have entered into partnership with Coursera, one of the world's leading MOOC platform providers who host our courses. In June of this year, another university social responsibility signature programmes, the School Governor Initiatives, won a second award within the space of an 8-month period, this time a business and the community big tick. The School Governors Initiative aims to improve leadership in state schools by encouraging staff and alumni, and all of you incidentally, to become school governors. Big Tick is an accolade under the Responsible Business Awards, the UK's longest-running and most respected award scheme, recognising organisations that are making a positive difference to society and to the environment. Early in the year, a university-led team won both the national and international awards at the Environmental Association of Universities and Colleges for their work recruiting staff for school governors. The final highlight I'm going to mention happened last month when the other Chancellor, the one who's never had a proper job, George Osborne, announced a £60 million, thank you very much, Graphene Engineering Innovation Centre, or GEEC, is to be built here. The facility will be critical in the development of commercial applications and in maintaining the UK's world-leading position in graphene and related 2D materials, and will allow for the acceleration of applied research and development in partnership with other research organisations and industry. The GEEC will complement Manchester's existing National Graphene Institute, where over 200 scientists and engineers are dedicated to graphene and 2D material research. Together, the two facilities will reinforce Manchester's position as a globally leading knowledge base in graphene research and commercialisation. Every year, at this point in my address, I've reflected on whether the university is maintaining its strategic direction and momentum to achieve its goals as set out in the strategic plan. I am very certain that with the focus and resolve that is so clearly evident from from just a small number of successes and those outlined in the President's speech earlier spanning over the past 10 years, these goals remain absolutely achievable. We can all be very proud of our university. But now, to the reason for us gathering here this evening, the honorary degree ceremony. I am absolutely delighted that I, in my role as Chancellor, and in the presence of the university's founders and the Foundation lecturer, am able to perform the highly pleasurable duty of honouring 3 extremely distinguished individuals who in their diverse fields have contributed hugely to the good of society and whose achievements have had a positive impact way beyond their most immediate spheres of influence. Each of today's 3 graduates will receive the highest honour this university can confer, an honorary doctorate. In conferring the honour, the university is not just recognising these distinguished individuals, it is also making a statement about itself. Because a university is ultimately shaped, empowered, and defined by the calibre, the qualities, and personnel, and professional values and achievements of those who choose and whom it allows to join its community, whether as honorary graduates, alumni, students, researchers, teachers, or the many, many support staff who help to facilitate the academic excellence in myriad ways. To the extent that that statement is true, our university is being redefined today by the honour that Professor Dame Julia King, Simon Weston, and Jeanette Winterson are themselves conferring upon us. In summary, in honouring them, we are honoured. In just one moment, the Acting Registrar will escort the first of our honorary graduates, Professor Dame Julia King, onto the platform, where the Vice President and Dean of the Faculty of Engineering and Physical Sciences, Professor Colin Bailey, will present her. Mr. Simon Weston will then be escorted onto the platform, and Professor Enrique Amaya will present him. Finally, Professor Jeanette Winterson will be presented by Professor Jeremy Gregory. Before the ceremony ends, Mr. Weston will address the congregation on behalf of our 3 newest graduates. So, it is with real pleasure that I now invite the Acting Registrar to escort the first of our honorary graduates, Dame Julia, onto the stage for the conferment of our honour degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa. Thank you.
Chancellor, distinguished guests, today we have the privilege and good fortune to honour one of this country's leading engineers, Professor Dame Julia King. And like all great engineers, Julia is a very practical human being. Her practical skills began at a young age when she would think nothing of making glamorous dresses to accompany her mother to the first nights at Covent Garden, when Julia's mother was a ballet critic for the Daily Worker. Equally, Julia frequently repaired the family's ancient Singer sewing machine, mainly because it was just too heavy to carry down to the repair shop. So being the practical person she was, she simply repaired it herself. Although she did admit that it did have some rather lethal wiring in it by the time that she had finished. Thankfully, it caused no disasters. It was, however, the visits during Julia's younger years to the Science Museum, particularly to see the model trains, that sowed the seeds for her engineering career in later life. She remembers clearly being told off numerous times, running around the museum trying to see if she could set all the models running at the same time. Luckily for the engineering profession, these exciting visits and the possibility of receiving a clip around the ear won over the more sedate trips she made to the Victoria and Albert Museum and the decorative arts. Julia excelled at secondary school and went on to read natural sciences at Cambridge. One unexpected skill Julia had to acquire upon going to Cambridge was to learn to ride a bicycle. Despite lots of practice, she was still a bit wobbly when she arrived at university, but fortunately there were no mishaps, and soon she mastered the skill. Another lifelong skill Julia acquired whilst on a field trip during her undergraduate course was the ability to eat onion sandwiches. On the field trip, Julia and her fellow undergraduates visited GKN's research centre. As part of the visit, the company took the undergraduates down to the mine, and afterwards the miners offered them a mug of tea and some food. Apparently, after being down the mine and having a mouthful of coal dust, onion sandwiches was the only food able to make any impact on the taste buds. Julia decided to stay on at Cambridge, and after she graduated, to do a PhD on steel fatigue and fracture within pressure vessels with John Knott. It was obviously a great place and great fun to do a PhD, and it was there that she met her future husband, Colin, who was working in a lab next to hers. Apparently, the effect of the onion sandwiches had worn off by then. They subsequently married in 1984, and we are delighted to welcome Colin to our celebrations today. In 1980, Julia moved to Nottingham University as a lecturer in the Materials Science Department, following a research fellowship with Rolls-Royce. The Nottingham Post was a baptism of fire when it came to teaching techniques. There was no new academics program to offer advice in those days, but Julia survived and started to excel in her academic career. And it was whilst Julia was at Nottingham that she was awarded the first Royal Academy of Engineers Senior Research Fellowship, although at the time it was called the Fellowship of Engineering. It was during the first year of the fellowship that she returned to Cambridge at the invitation of Professor Colin Humphreys. Now we fast forward to 1994, when Julia joined Rolls-Royce as head of materials, running a lab covering civil and military aerospace engines. For the next 2 years, variety was certainly the spice of life. During this period, her boss sent her over to the States, and she found herself working on a night shift on one of American Airlines maintenance teams at O'Hare Airport, to understand fully what Rolls-Royce did and how it affected the end customer. However, little did she realise that Rolls-Royce were actually testing her, because when she returned from the States, she found herself being interviewed for her next job as Director of Advanced Engineering to bring together 4 industrial power group businesses. She was offered the position of the director and headed to Newcastle for about 18 months, where she ran a very bright team of engineers, which she found really interesting and great fun. However, Julia's first day in Newcastle coincided with the day Kevin Keegan resigned as manager of Newcastle United. So unfortunately, Julia's arrival in Newcastle went totally unnoticed. Following a major restructure at Rolls-Royce, Julia was appointed managing director of the fan systems business with a turnover of about £200 million, 1,400 employees, based on 5 sites in the UK and businesses in the US. She found this time at Rolls-Royce very challenging, exhausting on occasions, very exciting, but once again, great fun. Another move within Rolls-Royce then found her appointed engineering director of the newly created Rolls-Royce Marine business. In 2002, Julia left Rolls-Royce to take up the post of chief executive at the Institute of Physics, a position she held on to until 2004. It was a great opportunity to become engaged in trying to influence government policy on science and technology and science education, issues that she is very passionate about. 2004 found Julia taking another call from the headhunters, this time asking her if she would be interested in the position of principal of the engineering faculty at Imperial College. After all those years in industry, returning to academic life was something of a shock. Working with Richard Sykes, the then rector of Imperial College, was certainly very tough but enjoyable, and an excellent training ground for things to come. They were very challenging times, but she was working with some extremely bright and very driven people. During her 2 years as principal, there was a 60% increase in research income at Imperial College. And on the 1st of November 2006, Julia took over as Vice-Chancellor of Aston University, a post which she currently holds. Julia's public service record is extremely impressive. She is a board member of Universities UK, a council member of the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, and a board member of the directors of the National Centre for Universities and Business. She is regularly called upon to advise government on education and technology issues, and is a member of the Committee on Climate Change, the Airports Commission, and the Science and Technology Honours Committee. In 2007, she was appointed by the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, Gordon Brown, to examine the vehicle and fuel technologies that could help reduce carbon emissions from road transport. This resulted in the King Review, with the final recommendations published in March 2008. In November 2010, she was appointed by the Prime Minister as the UK's low-carbon business ambassador. She was also a member of the John Brown's Review on Student Finance and served as a non-executive director of the Department of Business Innovations and Skills. She also found time to lead a Royal Academy of Engineering working party on educating engineers for the 21st century, the final report published in June 2007. She also maintains links with the commercial world as a non-executive director of Angel Trains, the Green Investment Bank, and a member of the Greater Birmingham and Solihull Local Enterprise Partnership. Recognising the amazing contributions she has made to higher education, engineering and technology, has seen her elected a Fellow of the Royal Academy of Engineering in 1997. In 1999, she was awarded a CBE for services to materials engineering, and in 2012, she had the great honour of being awarded a DBE for services to higher education and technology. She has been awarded a number of honorary degrees, with the most important one being awarded in the next couple of minutes. Her publications list is impressive too, with over 150 academic papers. I'm not going to read them all. On fatigue and fracture in structural materials and development in aerospace and marine propulsion technology. And how does this very busy person relax? She switches off in a number of ways. She still maintains an interest in the decorative arts by collecting modern prints and spends many hours in the garden. Julia has had some very tough and very challenging decisions to make throughout her career. But in spite of this, the word fun continually appears when she talks about her career, which is what engineering is all about. And we hope that she continues to enjoy making a difference, not only to the academic world, but also to the world of engineering. Chancellor, I am very pleased to present to you Professor Dame Julia King for the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa.
Professor Dame Julia King, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the University, and with great personal pleasure, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa. Congratulations. Many congratulations.
Chancellor, distinguished guests, it's a great honor for me to stand before you today to introduce a truly remarkable man who has become an inspiration to the entire country. Simon Weston had an unremarkable youth, growing up in a council state in the Welsh Valleys. after being cautioned by the police, his mom took him away by the scruff of the neck to join the Welsh Guards at the tender age of 16. After short tours in Berlin, Northern Ireland, and in Kenya, he was shipped off to join the conflict in the Falkland Islands, where he suffered life-threatening burn injuries, over 46% of his body. And this occurred after the Sir Galahad was bombed in June 8, 1982. The 32 years since that tragic event has witnessed the transfiguration and metamorphosis of the awe-inspiring individual that stands before you. These intervening years have resulted in the rebirth and redefinition of an individual with extraordinary courage, strength, humor, and joie de vivre. Simon's recovery has been an inspiration to all of us. And rather than hiding from public view, he has used his recovery and courage as a platform to help others in his untiring charitable work. Notable amongst these is his involvement as the lead ambassador of the Healing Foundation, a national charity championing the cause of people living with disfigurement and visible loss of function, by supporting research into novel and transformative physical and psychological healing treatments. In his capacity, Simon officially opened the Healing Foundation Center here in the University of Manchester in September of 2007, for which I act as the founding director. The vision we have at the Healing Foundation Center is to achieve scarless wound healing and regeneration of functional tissues and organs and appendages following injury, and this is a vision that we share with Simon. Simon's unwavering support of pioneering work aimed at improving the quality of life of individuals suffering from traumatic injuries is the reason we wish to honor him today. Chancellor, I'm very pleased to present Mr. Simon Weston for the degree of the Doctor of the University, honoris causa.
Mr. Simon Weston, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the University, and with great personal pleasure, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of the University, honoris causa. Congratulations. Many congratulations. Very well done. Very good. Good job.
Chancellor, distinguished guests, Jeanette Winterson is a leading novelist and public intellectual who, in her own person and writing, exemplifies the university's goals of outstanding research, teaching, and social responsibility. She was born in Manchester, and in her best-selling autobiography, Why Be Happy When You Could Be Normal, published in 2011, she observed, "It was a good place to be born. Manchester is in the south of the north of England. Its spirit has a contrariness in it, a south and north bound up together, at once untamed and unmetropolitan, at the same time connected and worldly." And recognizing, as she does, the excitement and almost unlimited possibilities of Manchester, we were delighted when she joined the university in 2012 as Professor of Creative Writing. Jeanette Winterson's creative work has challenged and expanded our idea of what a writer can do. Her first novel, Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit, published in 1985, and which won the Whitbread Prize for the best first novel, announced the arrival of a new prodigy in the English literary landscape. It is credited with opening up new areas in fiction, not just because of the way in which it tracked the life of a young woman coming to terms with her sexuality in a religious northern town, but because of the boldness with which she wrote about her subjects. Her own adaptation of the novel in 1990 went on to win a BAFTA and the Prix Italia for Best Television Drama. Jeanette changed tack for the breathtaking and extravagant historical novel The Passion, set in Napoleonic Europe, which won the 1987 John Llewellyn Rhys Prize for the best work of literature by an author aged 35 or under. And subsequent novels have continued to defy conventional ideas of a novelistic career, translated into dozens of languages and winning many prizes. She has embraced science fiction, fantasy, elements of magic realism, children's fiction, work for theatre, and in her last book, The Daylight Gate, Hammer Horror. She was awarded the OBE in 2006 for services to literature. And although she has not allowed her creative work to be pigeonholed, their central theme, I think, is freedom and freedom of expression. And understandably, this is reflected in her workshops and seminars at the university's Centre for New Writing, where her commitment to teaching and her dedication to the work of her students has made her a very popular figure. One of her MA students writes that Jeanette is, quote, a deeply impressive, tenacious, and reassuringly down-to-earth tutor, whose love of literature is as contagious as it is inspiring. Jeanette is a notable public intellectual and has been recognized as such in the Observer's list of Britain's top intellectuals who lead our cultural discourse. She has written a great deal of journalism, including for The Guardian, The Observer, The Times, and The New York Times, and has appeared on numerous occasions on radio and television, discussing political and social issues, as we heard tonight, as well as literature, and appearing, for example, quite frequently on Question Time. In her media work and exemplifying the university's concern for social responsibility, she has defended the importance of the arts for everyone. Chancellor, I'm very pleased to present to you Jeanette Winterson for the degree of Doctor of Letters, honoris causa.
Professor Jeanette Winterson, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the university, and with great personal pleasure, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Letters, honoris causa. Congratulations. And congratulations. I would now like to invite Dr. Simon Weston to address the congregation on behalf of all the honorary graduates.
Chancellor, honoured guests, I think it's a privilege to respond on behalf of the honorary graduates. When you listen to the illustrious careers that both of my colleagues have to their names, I feel like a real fraud being up here and to respond on behalf of the three of us. But the fact of the matter is, I think all three of us feel incredibly honoured to have received these awards. To be elected by any group to any position is a deep privilege for whatever we have achieved in our lives. And I think this is what it's all about. I think that some of the honours I've received in my life wouldn't be espoused up here, but the one that I do love is being classed as one of the top 100 Scousers in history. I came 75th, one after a dead horse. So being elected to anything in life does carry its moments of merit and demerit. But I do deem this to be a great, great honour to be elected to the University of Manchester, not least because I am, like the Chancellor, a great and avid Manchester United fan. And no apologies if I offend the other side at all. But I do deem it to be a great honour because when you look at the history and you've listened to the history and you know the history of this great university, even though as it's been joined of two, the history is huge. And it's not about just its history, it's where it's going. It's about the future. It's about creating new minds, new thoughts, new thought processes. And that's what's so incredibly privileged to be elected to be an honorary doctorate of this immense institution, this illustrious institution. And I think I can safely say, I hope, that all three of us are incredibly proud to be a part of this ceremony. I'm not going to stand here and do a party political or a political destruction of anybody else in this country, as Jeanette has managed to do, or Professor Jeanette. But thought-provoking as it was, it does give everybody the right to a call to arms, to stop being inactive and stop the inertia. And if you want to complain, vote. If you don't want to complain, that's fine. That's up to you. But she has brought a new light to a lot of thought processes and certainly made me rethink, as I'm still one of those floating voters that hasn't made my mind up yet. And after everything Jeanette said today, I'm not terribly sure I'm going to be able to make my mind up in the next 9 months. But I'd certainly know there's a lot more things I dislike about this country than I liked when I got up this morning. And on that basis, I will leave you to ponder where my life will be tomorrow morning. But I hope that I still like myself enough when I do get up to still revel in the joy and the glory of being given this honorary doctorate, as I hope my other two esteemed colleagues are as well. So thank you very much for this great honour for the three of us, and I wish you well, the university. I wish the university great growth and success, and I hope your ranking goes from where it is in the world, not just in Britain, not just in Europe, but in the world to where it should be. Thank you very much.
Doctors King, Weston, Winterson. We have today celebrated the award to you of honorary degrees, the highest honour that it is within the power of the University of Manchester to bestow. On behalf of the university, I extend to each of you our very best wishes for the future. I now declare the ceremony closed. Please will you stand.